Hey, good morning. Welcome to our training session today on how to go over a title commitment. It's real important that you're familiar with the different schedules. Now, it's not a good idea to interpret one of these or give advice to your client, but these are just some things that Nancy's going to go over that you should be looking for. And if there are some questions, then that's when you want to recommend that we go back to the title company for clarification. So it only really takes a couple of minutes to go through the commitment and when you know what you're looking for. So we're going to have Nancy talk about this. Nancy is the owner of Reunion Title, one of our preferred vendors, and she's also an attorney. And she has just been such a godsend for us, the questions that she answers for us almost on a daily basis. So with that being said, here's Nancy.
Thank you, Richard. And what I've provided for everyone is 2 exhibits, and these are 2 illustrations of actual deals that have closed in your office. And the Exhibit A that I provided is what I would consider to be a clean, fairly clean title commitment. So this would be, the first page is going to be the contract that goes along with this title commitment. And then behind it, you're going to find the title commitment itself, which starts with the First American. On this transaction, when we take a look at the first title commitment that comes back to the title company, so after you as an agent were to turn the contract into us, what we get back a few days later from the research from our plant, and this is going to be one that came back fairly clean. The first thing you want to look at when you look at a title commitment is you want to start with what on this particular exhibit is going to be your page 4, the Schedule A. There are 4 schedules to a title commitment, A, B, C, and D. D is really irrelevant to most people. It's just got boilerplate language. A is where you're going to start, and this is where we're going to start to determine if we have major problems that need to be corrected before we can actually close that contract you provided to us. So if you'll take a look at the contract, the first page, and I only provided 1 page for that, and you look at your seller listed on that contract, the first thing we're going to do to determine if we have problems is we're going to open up this title commitment, we're going to look at Schedule A, and we're going to look at number 3. That's called the vesting. So based on the research that our title plant has done on this particular property, they have determined that in order to ensure this transaction, that this named entity or individual, whether it's a person's name, a company's name, in this case a trust name, that that individual or entity is going to have to be the entity, individual, or seller at the time of closing, or something's going to have to be adjusted. So you know that if you look at number 3 on your title commitment that comes back on Schedule A, and it doesn't match the seller on your contract, that there needs to be some adjustment. That's going to be the first thing that needs to be addressed. However, if they match, and they match fairly closely, then we're in pretty good shape on the vesting piece. So that's the first thing you want to take a look at. Whether you're the seller's agent or the buyer's agent, because as the buyer's agent, that's also going to tell you if there's going to be issues there. Or are you in contract with the right entity, the right seller? It's going to tell you a lot of things. If that matches, or after that has been corrected or addressed to match, the next thing you're going to look at is you're going to look at your Schedule B. The next couple pages on this particular title commitment are extended because there's a very long legal description, so you're going to see that legal description behind your Schedule A. Oftentimes they're much shorter than this, but just know that that's what you're looking at there. But then you're going to get to your Schedule B. Your Schedule B is, I like to refer to it as pre-existing conditions that we're not going to insure. So for example, you go and you get a medical insurance policy, and you've had skin cancer before, for example. A lot of times that medical insurer will say, we'll give you medical insurance, but we're not covering future events of your skin cancer. What we're saying as a title company is we've found certain things that impact this property. We're not going to require they be fixed before closing, but when we issue the final insurance policy, we're not going to insure on these items. And oftentimes what you will see in this schedule is things like mineral leases, easements. These are all things that are typically listed in Schedule B. The reason Schedule B needs to be looked at, especially for a buyer, you can't interpret it, but you want to glance at it and at least bring it to your buyer's attention, is if you'll look at your TREC contract, you'll see in there where there's an objection place for your title commitment when it comes in. So let's say, for example, there's a substantial easement in here, and your people were thinking about purchasing this property and rehabbing it, and extending out the front of the property or putting a pool in the back. Just because you see blank space on that property doesn't mean that's usable space on that lot. So you'll see a lot of this, just like you see in the survey, but you also see this referenced in Schedule B. And the reason that's important is not only do your buyers look at that for objections, but before a survey company, if they're doing a new survey, will issue a survey to us, they want to see our Schedule B. So they take the title company's Schedule B, they compare it to their findings, and then they add anything they either missed or couldn't find. So this is a pretty important part of the title commitment that you don't hear much about typically on residential transactions. It can become a very big fight on a commercial transaction, but it's something you need to bring your buyer's attention to, let them know it's there, because these are items they're not going to be insured on. So that's something important, and it kind of gives you an extra edge, because I don't think a lot of realtors are out there talking to their buyers and bringing their attention to Schedule B. So something to keep in mind and kind of give a little value added to your clients. The next section we're going to look at is we're going to look at Schedule C. This is what most of you are going to hear about when you hear about clearing issues to get to closing. And sometimes people will bolt together the vesting issue that I talked about on Schedule A, whether our seller is the correct seller, with Schedule C as items that are being corrected. But they're really different. They are. Even though you correct or your seller may be right, there still may be issues with regards to liens, mechanics liens, old deeds of trust, other issues that the title company is saying, not like they said in Schedule B, they're saying you can't close this until these issues are corrected. And I think, Richard, we talked about a couple weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago, how every examiner is not built the same. So an examiner at a title plant is the one who puts these items on Schedule C. If you've got a fairly new examiner, you wouldn't know this, they're going to put everything they see. They're not going to go outside the box and make a judgment call as to whether something should be on here or not. So then it's going to become your closer's responsibility. And how experienced is your closer to read Schedule C and notice things that maybe shouldn't be on there, and take the time to contact the plant to get those corrected before they spend 2-3 weeks trying to find the owner or holder of an old lien that maybe shouldn't have been on here in the first place. Maybe they missed a release. Maybe they read something wrong. And just as a side note, a good example that we just had the other day is we had a title commitment come back on a property, and the examiner at the plant had examined a probate. And they glanced through the will that was on that probate, and they determined that some of the liens belonging to one of the extended heirs under the will that had received the property were going to have to be cleared before we could close. So we took a look at those and scratched our head a little bit, wondered why this extended heir was an issue, pulled out the will, read through it, and noticed that the property that we were dealing with was specifically bequested under that will to another heir. So that heir should have never been vested in title. Therefore, those liens should have never attached to the property. And we could have spent months, if we weren't experienced enough to be able to look at that will, trying to clear these things, when now we're closing next week. So knowing these kind of things and knowing the questions to ask and understanding just the basics of what you're looking at can really give you not only value added to your clients, but it can get your closings done and get your commissions paid and really move these things forward that end up kind of getting stuck and you don't know why. So that's just a little example there. Now, the reason I have 2 of these exhibits is on this Exhibit A grouping I gave you, this is a fairly clean Schedule C. What you're looking at here, and every title company is a little bit different, but for the most part, you're going to see items 1 through 8 almost on every Schedule C title commitment. So these are things that the title company is telling us: you have to get good funds when you close. You have to get a warranty deed signed. These are things that necessarily don't need to be cleared before closing, but they're instructions to us as your closers as to what we need to do. So what we'll typically do is we'll scan past those, and when we get to about 8, then we start realizing, okay, these are property specific. So here we see references to parties in our transaction. We see issues that they want us to look at. But what we don't really see here is we don't see some specific tax liens. We see a general abstract under number 5 on the second page, but that's just generalizing. You have a fairly common name, Timothy Smith, so there's lots of abstracts and liens out there. We are asked to just get the last 4 digits of a social or the trust CIN and make sure those don't apply. Now, if you'll go to your Exhibit B that I provided, and you'll take a look at the same Schedule C position, what you're going to see there when you get to 8 is you're going to see an issue with an abstract judgment that's specific to our situation. So this is where we're seeing things that we have to address. We either have to get a release for, we have to get these paid for at closing, we have to do some research and find out how we resolve this. But these are things that are going to extend the time period for closing. So it is great to have this information as early as possible. I actually like to tell people that if you even talk in your listing appointment about any issue, guardianship, a potential probate, a divorce, there may have been a lien at some point, a fight on a roof, let us know the property address and let us look at title early, even if you don't have a contract. Because we can start working on this stuff possibly months before, and by the time you get a contract, we're ready to just march right through to closing and we've resolved these issues. So that's an example of an issue you can see on Schedule C. You'll also see deeds of trust, mortgages that need to be paid off. Lenders are notorious for getting payoffs and not filing the releases that need to be filed. So you want to have a good closer that can critically look at this and say, okay, we have a deed of trust and mortgage from 2005, but there was a refinance in 2010 for an amount that was more than that with Bank of America. More than likely, that old mortgage just was never released. So being able to look at those and not going and searching for payoffs for things that don't impact the property, save everybody time. So those are just some things to note. I want to take you to that Exhibit B, and I want to take you back to the Schedule A. If you remember, we talked about vesting on Schedule A. This is an example of where we have, if you'll look at that first page of the contract, that's going to be Exhibit B, the first page of the contract, and we're going to bring our eyes to that seller section. And then we're going to go over to our Exhibit B Schedule A, and we're going to go down to our vesting. And what do we see? We see another person there. It's not the person that's on our contract. We've only got one of them on our contract. But we've got two people vested in title. So this typically will tell me either we had a divorce, maybe we've had somebody pass away, but there's something that's got to be addressed there pretty quickly. We need to figure out what's going on. We don't want to wait. We don't want to get this title commitment in, stick it in a file, and then wait because we've got 30 days till closing to make a call on this. We don't want to be fixing this right before closing. We want to be dealing with this, whether we're your title company or you're the agent getting the information. We want to be dealing with this right away. This is something that you don't want to hear 2 or 3 days before the lender documents are coming in for the buyer that we have a deceased spouse. So we immediately take that and make a call. And if we're dealing directly with the agent, then we call the agent. We will usually alert the agent that we see a vesting problem and that we're going to be making a call. We love to be able to go to the contract and go to the seller-buyer section and find phone numbers for the seller. That doesn't always happen, so it's a good thing to make sure it's in there. There's a reason why we need that. And I know a lot of times the agents want to be the primary contact for their people, but it does help us to have seller contact information because there's usually a lot of things we can be getting done that we like to bring to your attention, but we want to be handling those for you while you're going out and getting other business. And so in this case, we contact our seller and we ask, we see another name on here. Was there someone who passed away? Did we have a divorce situation at some point? With the agents we work with regularly, we hope that we had already gotten this information at the time of listing, which is great because we can already have addressed this before we ever got the contract. But if not, it's a new contract. That's the first thing we do. In this particular situation, we talked it through with Charles, who was the seller, and we were able to determine information with regards to her passing and quickly get things put in place so we could clear this issue. And then start focusing on the other issues on Schedule C and getting those resolved pretty quickly. So vesting, liens, issues that you see on Schedule C, these are the kind of things that are important to you that you want to be critically thinking about so you can make sure that if for some reason, and closures will have reasons why they put files to the side, they may be more difficult than the ones that are moving smoothly. You want to be educated enough to ask your closer, ask your title company the correct questions to keep them on point and not let them put your file over in the pile of trouble files that don't get addressed. And you want to be asking them, is there something I can do? Maybe you did come up with an issue. What can I be doing? Can I hunt the seller down for you? Can I help? It is your title company's responsibility to do that, but if you want to get the deal closed and be proactive, being able to ask those questions and showing them that you know how to read a title commitment will make them take you seriously. They'll make them consider your files, put them ahead of others, because they don't want to be made to look wrong. If they can give you answers that are broad and move on to the next one that's ready to close, a lot of times, unfortunately, that's the reality of workload. And you being able to know and understand these title commitments when you see them can really help your clients and help your closings move along a lot faster. And we're always available. If we're not closing it, if you have a title commitment from somewhere else, Richard, you know how to get a hold of us. There have been several scenarios where there have been questions where it's closing elsewhere. That's what we're here for. We're a resource. We can't close everything, but we can certainly help you answer questions for your clients and look at things that may just not seem right. You don't feel like you're getting the right answers. You feel like you're getting put aside. And please let us be a resource for that. Richard knows how to get a hold of us, and we've got 15-person staff in Dallas and the Tarrant County area that are there to help you.
Great. Nancy, we appreciate your help. You've been a great resource for us.
Definitely.
And 3 takeaways that I had from this, and one was if you're a listing agent, have that title policy open as soon as possible to make sure that
Absolutely.
MLS detail sheet. Number 2, that this title commitment has to be issued before the survey. So you may have a survey order, but may not make that survey until that title commitment is issued.
That's absolutely correct.
You're following up with your title company on that. And number 3, instead of just a closer, having a closer relationship with the title attorney is very important. I think it's a lot of issues like today in this crisis that a lot of typical closers, as you mentioned, they want to they don't really understand the issues behind these things. So Nancy's very hands-on with her files, and she also, there's fewer closers per attorney, where some of these other companies may have 20 closers and one attorney trying to deal with every speaking attorney. So we appreciate your hands-on experience and knowledge on this.
We are here to help.
Thank you guys.
Thanks so much, Nancy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Guys, I hope you got something out of this. Remember just to reach out if you need any help. And Nancy has just been just phenomenal in the last couple of months that we've been working with her. So, help. And like Logan says, when you're on that listing appointment, anything, if you hear divorce or death or estate, get that title commitment out of the way.
And just on a final note, I will provide to your office a list that I've created of hot topics to ask at a listing, so you can find those things out immediately.
Okay.
I've even had agents call me on listing appointments when they do find one of those and say, how hard is this going to be? And what do these people need to get? And they're signing the listing, and they've already got people going in the other room collecting documents that can considerably shorten the process and get us closed quicker.
Very good. Thanks a lot, guys.